YouTube and LinkedIn Live. And we have a really cool topic. I think this one resonates with Trench and I a load. And it's
Yes.
because today we want to talk about the weight of the top chair, the how you
Mm.
lead the organization through uncertainty at the top. I think the term is heavy is das the crown when it comes to leadership. And I know personally this is a topic that T and I talk about in the leadership for our own company, but it's something that obviously comes very apparent with people who are leading across organizations. And in fact, Trenchy, I think in your line of work, in a lot of our Elevate program and the work that you do with CXO leaders, this is something that also impacts them loads, right?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. Nice to be back again today. Absolutely. I think one thing that I realized when I'm talking to C level people, they are people. At the end of the day, they are human first, going through their own struggles. Yes, it may look a little bit different to you at the lower levels, but they are going through their own struggles. They also have personal struggles that they're going through. And so a lot of times they just need a space to speak out loud all the things that are going on in their minds. And so, yeah, I'm really excited to share some of the things that we work with them with on, and hopefully that resonates with people listening today.
When we started the podcast, if people are keen to go back through the old archives, we started with 10 episodes with entrepreneurs. And I remember when I started the business,
Yeah.
I felt alone. And I think that was
Mm.
before I had the privilege of you coming on board and joining me, Trenchia. But I
Yeah.
very much wanted to interview other entrepreneurs because it was an outlet to really meet and network with people who are going through the same struggles. And I think sometimes
Mm.
within an organization, you don't have the peer network because you're kind of at the top of the chain within your
No.
department. You don't have
Yeah.
the areas to have that outlet or community or support. And
Yeah.
so today, a big part of what we wanted to put together is a little bit of a how-to guide, a little bit of a
Yeah.
let's talk about the structure. So for us, we want to look at what's the reality of being at the top.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean? And how should you, in many cases, if you've stepped up into the roles, how should you adapt your leadership style? And how should
Yeah.
you be prepared for what comes ahead? We then want to dig into 3 key leadership behaviors you should demonstrate, especially in uncertainty when you're leading an organization through uncertainty. Um, what you should think about as an executive and what you should be conscious of. And finally, what do you want your leaders below you emulating? What do you want them to be seeing? What behaviors do you want them to champion? Um, so I'm
Mm.
really excited to dig in this topic. As I mentioned earlier, this is something we do with organizations week in and week out. We've seen it with CXOs across renewable energy, life sciences, FMCG. People are
Yeah.
people, and they are experiencing these
Yeah.
problems from top to bottom. Um,
Yeah.
but let's kick it off, T. Let's talk around the reality of the top chair. What do you
Mm.
think that means when someone's saying, "Oh, you're embracing an area of uncertainty," and what are some of the realities I think we have to start acknowledging?
This is a great one. I think I actually just came from a workshop right now and talking to a group of school principals actually, and they are sitting in the top chair, but and they actually feeling the weight. And I think one of the things that came out from the workshop, and many other spaces as well, when we speak to them, is they've been put in those positions but no one has also showed them how. So they're also learning as they are going. Yeah, they're navigating this VUCA world we're living in. A lot of times they are the first to learn about certain things that are coming around the corner before the announcements are made. So they carry this weight on them because there's information that they carry that the rest of the teams may not know. And when this information is shared, people are watching them. They're watching everything they do. They're watching every facial expression. They're reading into every word that they say or every pause that they make, and messages get um, misinterpreted. I think a lot of times this uh, or things get lost in translation, as they say. And so, really, what people want, they want the stability, but the leader at the top, does not always know or have the tools of how they can give that and disseminate that across the organization. So I think in terms of the reality is just, if if the leaders at all levels can understand, or maybe at some point put themselves in the shoes of the leader sitting at the top, I think there would be a lot more empathy, there'd be a lot more compassion, a lot more grace, because it is really one lonely at the top, because you may not always have a network of people that you can rely on. You may not be allowed really to share some of the information until it's fully formed. And so there's a lot going on in their minds on their own, before they have a chance to unpack it. And so I think a lot of times when I get in the room with a C-level leader, it's really them just getting the space to speak openly, to just get out what's on their minds. And it just creates a space for them to breathe a bit. So that's what I find is really the reality. One, they are human. They're going through their own things. They're going through things personally as well while they're trying to lead a business and lead hundreds of people. And so I think for me, what I've come to, realize and also teach at the lower levels is having grace and empathy for the people sitting at the top.
And I think when things aren't going right or there's a lot of uncertainty, we have this in organizations where there's like decision paralysis. And if you don't have
Yeah.
psychological safety and you don't have people being able to take decisions, or everyone's really nervous or anxious, the decisions keep getting pushed up top. I mean, I've lost count of the amount of
Yes.
leaders that have asked us to come in to do programs during periods of uncertainty where they feel like, I
Yeah.
don't feel like people are taking the accountability to take on their own decisions, but it's because the pressure has been amplified. And as a
Yeah.
result, you don't have anyone else to keep pushing those answers up to. Um,
100%.
so I do
100%.
love what you said, that kindness both ways, which I think is difficult. I think because there's a lot of blame that continues to move up the ladder. It always
Mm,
goes like, oh, it's the leadership, oh, it's the C-suite, and many times that's because
mm.
there's a lack of information or a lack of
Yeah.
trust that starts to build. But we're going to
Yeah.
talk through some ways that you can work around that. Um,
Absolutely.
but I think the key is that leadership becomes a set of systems. We talk around
Mm.
systems, risk, people, and strategy, and
Yeah.
it needs to be proactive. And I
Yeah.
love what you were saying. Everything you say and do is being kind of being reported. You're under a microscope, especially when things are tough,
Yeah.
because people are trying to
Yeah.
look for that reassurance, for that
Mm.
clarity, for that security. And when you
Yeah.
recognize that, you realize what behaviors you need to be demonstrating, even if you don't have all the answers. Um,
Agreed.
it is our
Agreed.
job as leaders to create clarity, to create it
Mm.
doesn't mean that we have to know the answer. People can be
Mm.
aware that there are in
Mm.
today's current market. I had an amazing guest, Steve Leach, in the studio yesterday for an in-person episode. Really excited for that to go live. You don't always know the answers. Leaders don't
Mm.
always know what the next step is, but they give people direction, and they
Yeah.
make sure that there's still movement. There's not stagnation. It's not deer in the headlights sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think that's the piece we wanna step into, isn't it, T?
Mm.
What are the
Mm.
3 goals for what leaders should be driving? But first, it's creating stability by providing direction.
Absolutely. I think that's a huge one from my perspective. Because people are looking for direction. They need the stability, and you, as the leader at the top, you may not always be able to know specifically every milestone along the way. But direction, it doesn't mean that you have every step marked out from the beginning. Direction means, big picture. How are you painting that picture for them so that they can feel that we're going somewhere and that we're not chasing our tails and going around in circles? I think that's really what people want to feel, that there's momentum created, a forward momentum, not just, we take a step and then we take 10 steps back and then we go forward. But they're looking for these micro steps, really, because I think a lot of people do understand that the path is foggy, that the path is dark. And so we need to illuminate each step, every step we take. So every step we take, we basically shedding light onto the next step, onto the next step. And I think if the whole organization can understand and support that the C-level, and in driving the vision and that direction, I think the organization will be stronger for it.
People can't tolerate indecision, lack of direction. In the last podcast that we did last week in our live
Yeah,
episode, we were talking about the power of confidence and why people
yeah.
gravitate that. And unfortunately, I got stuck on the live podcast all on my own. So if you did check in last week, you got a bit of a monologue from me around the topic because I get really tied into the emotional intelligence and the evolutionary byproduct of how people react in these kind of environments. But
Yeah,
that confidence doesn't always have to be that we know the answer, but that you're seeking the
yeah,
answers and that you're moving in the right direction. And I love what you said,
exactly.
being clear about what the next step is, shining light on those things, because you really need to
Mm,
reinforce a North
mm.
Star. What are we working toward?
Yes,
We're
yes.
powering through a very difficult time period right now. And we've talked about this all the time, that there's sometimes leaders need to be able to recognize there are issues and bring it to people's attention to form that
Yeah,
trust, because we
yeah,
don't mind that there's uncertainty and challenges ahead of them, as long as you've got a plan in action to get them there or seek the answers. And that's where you're setting that new mission,
yeah,
that new North Star,
yeah.
to power you through that challenging time.
Absolutely. And the language matters. So, being able to say, here's where we're going, or here's why this matters, or here's what we are focusing on right now, again, helps people to focus, bring their attention onto what is it that we all need to be working on together. Not everyone trying to, go down their own paths and figure it out on themselves, but really as a collective, um, as a team, how are we collaborating together to follow that North Star? I think that's the key.
How do you simplify that complexity is such a cool way to put that. And I think
Yes.
we work with companies in space, building rockets. We work within renewable energy, biologics, really
Yeah.
complex pieces where some challenges and uncertainty can fall around all sorts of things: failure in FDA audit, delays in
Yeah.
getting your satellite launch, massive implications from contracts. And I think it can feel like these problems are massive, and they are complex and
Mm,
challenging, and they do
mm.
create uncertainty of where's next in the organization. But there is a level of simplicity you can bring to it. And I think
Yeah.
the simpler it is, the easier it is to understand, the easier it is to communicate, the easier it is to get buy-in on what that next step looks like. And that simple
Mm.
message is: where are we going?
Yeah.
Why does it matter?
Yeah.
And what we're focusing on now to get to that
Mm.
direction. Like you said, T, what is that
Yeah.
next step in the direction of where we're going to?
100%.
The second tip we would really encourage people to look at is, and we talked about this in the last episode,
Mm.
I feel like people who've tuned in for our next episode are going to be like, "You're beating us over the head with this idea," but it is modeling calm behavior. We talk about how you are under a microscope. We did last week. Leadership needs to be it needs to be visual, and people need to be able to see that you are feeling confident in the next direction. I think in our last episode we were chatting more around how
Yeah.
do you build confidence in situations where you don't have experience or knowledge,
Mm.
and why it's so important to those around you. But as a
Mm.
senior leader of an organization, I think many times people are already assuming you've been through those challenges before, and naturally people do
Mm.
demonstrate those behaviors. But T, why do you think that emotional temperature, if it is, why is that so important to an organization?
I think, um, if we're looking at the C-level, the C-suite leaders, they setting this temperature. Again, they are the ones leading the ship, right? Let's stay with that analogy. If they are panicking, everyone's going to be panicking. If they are trying to get to a state of perfect, everyone's going to try and get to a state of perfect. There is no such thing. So the role modeling is key. People are looking up. So when they look up, they need to see what they need to translate to their level. Yeah. And so if the senior leaders are pretending, they, I've spoken to so many leaders that say the senior leaders think that they're hiding things well, but they're not. We see it. And so I think this is the key here, that yes, we are in a state of chaos, we're in a state of uncertainty. We can't hide it because the chaos is here. We're living in this VUCA world. Yeah. But how can we control that chaos? How can we control the urgency? How can we control the priorities that we are working on? And the only way we can do that is when senior leaders give direction. They are decisive. They are not waiting and waiting. We spoke about a few episodes ago about the 70% rule. If you're 70% sure you've got 70% of the information and you can move, move. Because the indecision is what creates that instability. It creates the uncertainty. It creates a lack of confidence, low self-esteem. And that's really not where we want our people to be. We want them to feel confident. We want them to feel that they too can make decisions. Because if you as a senior leader are struggling to make decisions, guess what? Every level below you will also struggle to make those decisions. There's fear. We spoke about the psychological safety. People don't feel safe to speak up. This is what will happen. And so I think for me, it's really about role modeling calm, decisive behavior so that cascades down the organization.
That decisiveness is so critical. I think I always think of like, I don't know if you've done like team projects or stuff or been with people and they're like, ah, maybe. And you're like, oh, this has definitely not been thought through or planned. And that's where those gut reactions come from. And when
Yeah.
you, and we talk about this when we do our leadership programs and why people should start at the top because it trickles down.
Absolutely.
Similarly, though, vision goes up. So it seems like, you've got to have a balance of understanding how you're going to be perceived and what behaviors
Yes.
you're modeling to the organization so that you can drive that controlled urgency. And I think
Absolutely.
the third piece to help drive that, and this is something that I think companies and teams get so wrong all the time, is how to communicate open and early and what to communicate when.
Yeah.
We've talked about
Yeah.
this. I get cringy. I hate it when I go for wine with people or I'm sat at dinner and you hear the gossip from work and it usually is loads of reasons why these things have gone
Mm.
incorrectly, where someone has
Yeah.
overshared or undershared
Mm.
and getting
Mm.
that balance right of what I'm sharing to my team members, what I'm not sharing. I would love to
Yeah.
talk about that because
Yeah.
pure silence creates fear. And we talk about the human
Oh,
brain
yeah. Yes.
is just a nightmare when it comes to creating scenarios of why things have
Mm.
gone wrong or not gone wrong. It's our own worst
Mm.
enemy. It's a beautiful thing about our
Yes.
evolution, but it's our own worst enemy. And people fill the gaps. Rumors spread, stuff
Mm.
becomes very prevalent, and it impacts the entire
Mm.
organization as a whole. So,
Mm.
how do we get that balance right? If you were to think about like, what at the end of the day, I've got information probably that I need to keep the team engaged, but I don't want
Yeah.
to overshare. I don't want to undershare. How do we get that balance right?
I think it comes back to emotional intelligence. Understanding your audience. So understanding your team, understanding the culture of your business. You know what you've been creating before this. And this is why it's so important that we're building culture, we're building connection, rapport with people before a crisis hits, before the crazy times come. Because during those times, it's so much harder to build that culture and build that. We need to rely on what we've built before. So I think that's the key, that we are building every day and not just during these uncertain times, because it's very hard to build trust during these times. It's easier to build the trust before, and then during the uncertain times, you basically withdrawing from this trust account. That's how John Maxwell talks about it. So executives need to know, what is it that they need to share, how they need to share it. I think the other big one is being vulnerable enough to say, I don't know certain things, right? Just being open and saying, I actually don't know, but we're working on X, Y, and Z to figure that out. And then I think the real key is to communicate before the anxiety can set in with people.
Yes.
So that's that early piece, right? Before the conspiracy theories, the assumptions are made, the fears take over. How can we? It's that change management story, it's that transition story. What is the story? How, what are you sharing, and how much are you sharing? And you will be sharing different things at different levels as well. So it's not always about having this massive town hall and all hands and everything's being shared, because the messaging is also different from level to level. And
Yes.
I think that's another thing that we don't really consider. We just like, oh, let's bring everybody in the room, we say the same message to everybody, and then, whereas each group of people needed to hear it in a different way.
When how many times have we heard that where you've got leaders who are like, I found out in the grand forum with everyone else, and it creates
100%.
more pandemonium because they haven't been kept in the
Yeah.
loop or you haven't continued to develop that trust. I mean, I hate when it comes back to communication again, but communication isn't for yourself. If we're leaders, we are trying to
Yeah.
impact other people's behavior. That's really
Yeah.
when you think of like feedback, when we think of like everything is about trying to get the
Yes.
best out of your team possible. And the reality is sometimes, and this is where these things go really poorly in organizations where people think they're building that trust account. They're like, oh, good. By the way,
Yeah.
guys, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but there's going to be redundancies or this is going to happen. And they think they have done a favor to this team, like they've given them, but there is now panic. And that decision may
Mhm.
not have been one that was actually on the table, or maybe it is something under
Yeah.
consideration, but there's a reason it's not been communicated yet. These
Yeah.
big events mean that everyone stops performing, they start freezing, they start having anxiety and going home and
Yeah.
looking at jobs and whatever might be the issue, which means they're not performing. And it becomes like
Yeah.
this self-fulfilling prophecy. I know we always say that leader is like an umbrella, it's like a screen, and what we
Mhm.
let through, right, is important for both the health of the team member. And that's what people
Yes.
forget sometimes is about people being able to know that
Yeah.
we've got direction, we've got
Yeah.
consistency, you're communicating challenges that are happening in the organization, but you're making sure that
Mhm.
you action the stuff that you need to at the right time and not also under, what do you call it? Oh my goodness. When you under circumvent
Value.
the leadership team, right? You
Yes.
basically
Yes. Yeah.
destabilize the consistent messaging. And that's where
Yeah.
a lot of times where those rumors come from.
Yeah. Absolutely. Undermine. I think that's the word we
Undermine.
were looking. um,
Call it live podcast brain.
Yeah, no problem. But
And
I think on this one was a very practical thing that a senior leader can do is share specific talking points to those different leaders that they can then take to their group of people. So again, giving direction, keeping the messaging, on track, on point, so that people are not going rogue. Those are the times where we need to control the messaging more from it's not from a place of like dictatorship, but from a place of just all being aligned, that different people are not hearing different things and causing unnecessary panic. I think that's the key.
when people join a team or a company, right,
Mm.
they have trust in that leadership and they've
Mm.
de facto elected you their leader. They've joined the business, they've signed the contract. Like, so there is,
Yeah.
I love it. So we say it's authoritarian, but obviously they trust in the fact that you're going to make the right decisions and push the right needle
Mm.
forward. But
Mm.
I mean, one of our I values is inclusion internally. So we believe that
Mm.
means loads of things, not just inclusion in the good times, but it means being transparent of when things are tough and when challenging. And
Yeah.
how do we, make sure that we are embracing things together as a team? And you can lean on the company values while also understanding that I think it was something that Charmaine said in one of the episodes where I was saying, like, what's around cultural intelligence? I was saying,
Mm.
how do you have a difference between um, cultural intelligence and like stereotyping? She's like, because
Yeah.
it's for the person. What is it to
Yes.
the person? Why are you
Yes.
thinking about this next course of action? Because the individual is your priority. If that's
Yeah.
the case, people feel that, and they know you can't share everything.
Absolutely.
They know this won't always be something that they can action. Um,
Yeah.
and you wanna
Yeah.
then I love what you said, equip your managers with the same messaging, make sure there's
Mm.
consistency. I
Mm.
think probably the big issue is them understanding, especially younger managers as it comes down the funnel, understanding the impact of why certain information is
Yes.
being withheld at this point and why
Yes.
we are encouraging some information to be distributed.
Absolutely.
That brings us to our third section. So, what C-suite leaders should think about?
Mm,
What are some questions you could ask to your team? What are some internal dialogue that you can utilize?
mm.
To what kick us off here? What should see if you're a C-suite leader? Well, you are a C-suite leader. If you're a C-suite, or you are speaking to a C-suite that you're doing some CXO coaching with now. What are
Yeah.
some things that you kind of position as reflective questioning?
I think the big one, and it's a word I think everybody's using. It's a buzzword now at the moment, but it really matters, and that word is culture. How do we protect our culture while things are shifting? And I think this is a big one because it's an intangible. And so, and culture actually sits with each person in the organization. It's not only coming from the person on the top. Yeah. And so culture gets tested during uncertainty. Yeah. And so we need to reinforce that culture and not see all the hard work that we've built up until this point just erode away. I think that's the worst thing that can happen because it's built like Lego blocks, like one block at a time. And so it's hard to build culture, but it's easy in like a moment or in like a very short space of time for it to be lost. So I think this is a key one that we should be thinking about. How can we protect the culture that we've been building during these times where it's uncertain and things are changing and moving?
It's funny when we think of like culture and values, and I kind of in my mind I was just thinking of those Roman Tushudos that used to be like, the
Yeah.
I know everyone says men are always thinking about the Roman Empire, but those shields, right, are blocking
Yeah.
together and bringing a strong company together. It's like the interlinkings of
Yeah.
your business. And as you start getting hit with uncertainty, rocks start getting
Mm,
thrown at it, people start barging into it. It starts to
mm,
take when it's good times, it's just easy. You can move through
yeah.
things without much challenge. And all of a sudden, you start having outside influences really start to smash into this Roman
Yeah.
shield wall, right?
Yeah.
If it breaks apart, it's where panic hits, right? And,
Yeah.
in war terms, soldiers are running away and they're getting cut
Yeah.
down. I'm making this really morbid, but what I'm getting at is I don't think people really understand the impact of some of the values of an organization. And we were having this
Mm,
some of this
mm,
conversation with the CHRO last week around it used to be a marketing exercise. Values were put on the wall
mm,
and used as marketing
mm.
documentation. Still crazy in today's day and age. We sit down with boards and they're like, let's just do these values, or this sounds really cool. This
Yeah.
will look good on a t-shirt. And you're like, no, you need these to be behaviors that can be modeled in difficult times. And it needs
Absolutely.
to be language that people can use to describe behavior in difficult
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. The idea that you go, why would you make that decision, or why have you chosen that solution? And someone's like,
Yeah.
because of this value and this value and this value.
Mm.
Amazing, right? It allows your
Amazing.
organization to operate in the way that you need it to go and the way that you
Yeah.
believe behaviors to resonate towards that
Yeah.
North Star, towards that vision. All that
Yeah.
feeds into your company culture.
100%. I think another one that C-suite leaders should be thinking about is where are the hidden risks? Because a skill that they need to be possessing is foresight. So looking ahead even before your team does, right? So what's hidden? Not just the financial implication, but the human asset implication, reputational implication, operational implication. What must your senior leaders that are reporting into you be thinking about that should maybe coming around the corner? So I think the hidden risk piece is again um, just looking ahead and then making sure that we're shoring up where we need to, strengthening where we need to, and that may mean strengthening the leadership bench that you have. How are you building those leaders up to handle these times of uncertainty, because nobody's really teaching this every day, right? And if they haven't gone through something before, they haven't had experience on how to handle this. So are we teaching them how to navigate through these times, specific skills and tools to help them through these times. So I think it's during those times, they may be needing coaches to speak to unpack what they're going through and feeling so that they can better lead their teams. So are we actually leaning into the resources that are available outside of the organization to really help the organization? So yeah, these are some of the things that we
I
talk
love
about.
that hidden risks element though, because we talk around that controlling information and why we want that trust and
Mm,
transparency. People
yeah,
below you are making decisions and sometimes don't have viewpoints on what those risks are. If you knew
mm,
one of them was financial, it might mean you may not gamble on something that's going to be a high cost
yeah,
investment. If you know something might be people oriented because of
yeah,
engagement scores or challenges to the organization, then you can be more delicate with how you're communicating
yeah,
messages. I think what ends up happening is people operate in a lack of information, and that's what you were
yeah,
alluding to. What are resources that you can utilize in these very difficult scenarios? Outside coaches, engagement scores. I hate to come back to consulting. It's not a plug, I promise. But I just saying that I think sometimes people are operating with limited information and then are
yeah,
surprised that they haven't identified the risks properly and how they can then influence team members around them. So they struggle to be able to articulate or choose the information that needs to be communicated to that leader at that time
yeah.
to ensure that you don't make big mistakes, even if someone is making a decision based on your values and your culture and your business.
Agreed.
Another one that we talk about a lot is, are you always developing your leaders for when these scenarios happen? One of the things that there was a massive CHRO assessment of the FTSE 500 companies, not this year, because this year it's been focused on profitability and uncertainty because of the geopolitical environment. The year
Mhm.
prior, it was leadership. They were saying, we don't know if we've enabled leaders to encounter us in these tough times. So it's a shame because a lot of CEOs were probably forward thinking to all the challenges and
Yeah,
uncertainty that's happening this year. But
yeah,
how do we develop leaders when strategy fails, and you need to strengthen that middle leadership? And a lot of the programs I think we've had the
mm,
privilege of being able to build for companies means that
yeah.
that senior leadership can also lean more on that middle leadership. It takes weight off
Love that.
if your first line and your middle leadership layer are strong fundamentally. When I say that,
Absolutely.
how do you think that feels? Because I can see you smiling and getting
Yes.
really excited because it's
Yes, super
exactly to
exciting.
what you do.
Because I have a story and I have an analogy, so which I
Love it.
think is helpful. So I don't know why we always use the analogies from the army, but I think it just makes sense because we see it. It's something that we can visualize. And so when you're looking at this middle managers or the first line leaders, they are your first line of defense. They are the people that are carrying the weight. They are the people that actually make the vision real. They are the people that actually execute the ideas that the senior leaders are putting into place. So for me, it's if we can show up and strengthen that first line, that middle layer, they ultimately are um, your defenses, right? That people, they are the ones that are actually touching every employee in the organization. Because when we're looking at the top chair, you don't it's one person or a few people. You don't possibly have that span of control over every person, every human in the organization. So you are relying on all the levels below you to actually go out and live out and model the behaviors that you are trying to model yourself at the top. And so they need to understand why. Why is that important for me to do? For me to carry that for on behalf of the senior leaders, why is that important? So I think that really comes from having that connection and engagement.
I love that you brought in the military piece because I just have a quick anecdote, another not story but analogy. I find it
Mhm.
interesting that you're right. In the military, you'll be people get put on a mission and then they respond to really uncertain scenarios. They have
Mm,
different game plans that they can foresee what they think might happen, but in the moment, many of the infield leadership needs to make executive decisions quickly, decisively, and with confidence to
yeah.
protect and serve the people that they've taken into those battle zones.
Mm,
I like comparing this as well to if you compare American football to rugby. or even football, English football, rather than American football. But the American football, the head coach calls all the plays. You know, they do
Yes.
everything, strategy, and I find it very interesting that in rugby you don't have the ability to do that because there's no change in play. There's no time. You know, there's only limited halftime shows. You need people on the field to be able to read and execute different decisions. It takes smarter decision
Yeah.
making. So you can give them training, give them support, but once the game kicks off, it's all
Yeah.
up to the 15 players that are on the pitch. It's an
Yeah.
interesting analogy for how I think organizations run that move slowly to innovate or change is when decisions continually going up to the top. And I think it creates a level of leadership fatigue. When I see leaders that are like
Mm.
exhausted during these really
Yes.
difficult milestones or people that you get a chance to coach and work with, they're in
Mm.
a point where they feel like overwhelmed because instead of making
Yes.
several key strategic decisions, which is what you want from your senior leadership to set the direction and drive the culture, they're
Mm.
instead getting bogged down. And we hear this a lot, especially in small to medium sized companies where people are transitioning, where they've gone from it being 20 or 30 or 40 people, and they've been used to being the person that's the answer to everything, to it scaling to a much larger organization. The difference is to be able to create the layers where you've enabled people to react
Mm.
to those environments and make decisions and get involved.
Mm.
Otherwise, you just, you know, you're slowing down,
Yeah.
you know, the opportunity
Absolutely.
to innovate.
Mhm.
And the last one, which we've already talked on quickly, and I know we're running a little over. I'm really enjoying this episode, so I'm not gonna, as long as people aren't getting too upset and lost on their lunch break, and stick with us. Um, how do we sustain trust? You know, and that we've talked about it early in the episode, so I won't put too much time. But we talked about drawing on that trust account. But I would indicate that whether it's your employees, your customers, your partners, the board,
Mm.
you're building relationships and you're sustaining trust because of the tools that we're using above. And the
Yeah.
funny thing is in uncertain times, you can actually continue to build trust. And I've seen
Yeah.
it and witnessed it in organizations. I've certainly felt it with our team here when people feel part of the solution, they feel
Mm.
involved in what's going on. People can
Mm.
embrace it. We go through tough times, but can we do it
Absolutely.
together and can we weather the storm?
Yeah.
Finally, what executives want from the leaders below them. So I think we've already started to touch on this. So I don't know if we need loads of time, but
Mm.
to you, as you in a senior leadership role, what do you want to see your leaders exemplifying or behaving? Because they
Yeah.
cannot hold on to this organization alone. We were just finishing that in the previous topic. So what do they want their
Absolutely.
managers to do? What should you want your managers to do?
Well, I think first thing is adopting a growth mindset. So where you're looking at every challenge or every change as an opportunity to grow and not like somebody is saying, oh my gosh, here we go again. There's another change. There's another change. But you actually want people to say, so, okay, there's another change, but how do we solve it? How do we grow through this? Not just get through it, but how do we grow through it? Because every opportunity that's presented to us, if like it or not, we are growing. Like it or
Well,
not, we are growing.
we say this all the time. I love saying if you position a problem into a growth moment, it changes your
Yeah,
positive spin on what's happening anyway.
absolutely.
Trust me, we've gone through plenty of growth
Plenty.
moments in
Yes.
our thing. Um,
Yes.
I love that, and I think it's you forget
Yeah.
that you become a stronger leader through each of these experiences, and when you're
Yeah.
managing your team, it's giving them
Yeah.
the confidence to make those
Yeah.
mistakes and battle through this, and the expectation that when you get through this, you'll be a stronger leader because of it.
100%. I think one last one from my side would be take care of your people. So every layer taking care of your people. I had a coaching session this morning, and one of the delegates is based in Israel, and and as you know, there's a lot going on, but this person's manager and this person's um, manager's manager actually had a one-to-one to check on this person and let them know what they can do, what they can't do, what support they have during this time. And it made a world of difference. They made the circle smaller. The CEO couldn't come and do that for the person, but their immediate manager leaders did that. And it made a world of difference. So in those times, make the circle smaller, take care of the people in your charge. And that helps really drive and keep the culture going across the organization.
I love that so much because your managers are your first stabilizers. And if
Yeah.
either your team is going, oh, it's C-suite again, or it's these problems, like there are
Yeah.
things within your control. I think it's a big thing you've coached on with organizations that we've taken through large transformations is be responsible for what you can impact, and again, yes, we're aware there will be other challenges at varying different levels or whatever, but you can bring that stability and drive your own culture within your own team. And yes, we talk, this episode's around people at the top of the organization, but if your managers feel that, then you'll get much better results across the organization. I only have two I would add to this, which was the translate strategy, which we've talked about anyway, but being able to translate it to the leaders beneath you,
Yes.
turn it into daily behavior, indicate, we've talked around keeping people steady, reinforcing that calmness.
Yes.
And I think that there are things that we've talked about before that start to get pulled out of the diary. Yes, there is probably a lot of urgency in time of uncertainty, but don't get rid of things that actually do bring calm and stability, one-to-ones, team member sessions, getting the team, things that are going to actively make sure that people are like, yes, we're going through a tough time, but it's not like everything's changing as a result.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like you said, take care of your people. People resonate it. They feel it. So, T, do you have any before I give a closing to this episode, do you have any last things that you'd like to share with our live audience?
At the end of the day, we are all human first, before the titles, before the roles. And if we can keep thinking about how I can take care of the person to the left, the person to the right, understanding that we all play a part and the weight should not only sit on the person sitting at the top, I think we will have, better organizations at the end of the day.
Organizations steady, or they stay steady when you have top leaders that set direction, when you have senior leaders that translate it, right? And actually can stomach and feel the response. And finally, your emerging leaders execute. So if you feel like that's happening within your organization and you feel like trust has been built, fantastic. We would love to speak to you and learn more. We always enjoy hearing about success stories of positive organizations. If that's something that you're struggling with, shameless plug, reach out to us. We have really enjoyed building and working with teams that are going through these challenges. I find the most interesting piece, I mean, we talk around the communication, the trust, the leadership element of the emotional intelligence, the human skills, and the soft skills piece. It's a very hard thing when that trust has been broken or the organization has not had some of these things in place, and it is a transformation, but you don't have to do it alone. And whether you do reach out to us or you look at speaking to a coach or having an outlet, many times it can feel like you're shouldering so much weight, especially if, like we've said, we haven't created these layers. And I know, I've seen CEOs that we've either looked to invest in or we've wanted to work with or that we've done podcasts with or done leadership programs with. And there is an out and there is a direction that you can get to, and you can build the systems that make you effective, comfortable, and at the end of the day, create a psychologically safe business and company.
So good.
So thank you everybody so much. This has been so much fun. We're so excited to do these. We keep seeing the viewership go up and up on the different platforms. So we must be doing something right. Please join us again next week. If you are interested in learning more about our podcast, you can visit it at impeltalent.com/podcast. If you're interested in getting involved in the podcast or perhaps sending us some questions, you can email us at info@impeltalent.com. Please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a few people joining us on YouTube, speaking directly to you. And if you're on LinkedIn, you should start to see these events repopulate every week. They're 12 o'clock on your lunch break if you're in the UK. And we really enjoy hopefully seeing you all again next week. Thank you for joining. Thank you for learning. And hopefully you'll have taken something from this session that you can take into the real world.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.